Hello and welcome to the Supporting Linguistic Integration Through Multilingual Approaches webinar. This is the third webinar in the Enhancing Access for Refugees and New Americans projects series about supporting immigrant integration. And my name is Jessie Stad with RTI International, and I'm the project director for EARN. So today we're going to dive into, if you go ahead to the next slide, we're going to dive into linguistic integration, including how linguistic integration can be supported by the use of multilingual approaches. And we'll explore how multilingual approaches look in action through a panel discussion. Before we do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the EARN project on the next slide. The Enhancing Access project aims to provide adult education state staff, local program staff, and instructors who are offering IELCE or Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education activities with the resources and technical assistance to help them apply an immigrant integration and inclusion lens to support learners' linguistic, economic, and civic integration. On the next slide, you'll see the project's IELCE Immigrant Integration Framework, which shows the alignments between the legislative programmatic requirements of IELCE and IET in alignment with services that support immigrant integration. And we're obviously going to dig deeper into those blue items in under linguistic integration at the bottom there today. Before we get started, we did just want to share a Jamboard link on the next slide. What we're doing here is this is a place for us to share resources related to multilingual approaches, for our presenters to share some resources, and for you to share some resources. So feel free, if there are any resources that you've used that have been helpful to you, to go ahead and add resources to the Jamboard. If you haven't used them before, you can just click on the sticky note, put a note in there and click save, and it's there and you can move it around on the screen. So definitely please feel free to share anything on that Jamboard throughout today's webinar. We'll also keep it up moving forward. Okay, so next slide. Let's dive into linguistic integration. What is it and why does it matter? So on the next slide, you'll see some language from WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Linguistic integration is not defined in WIOA, but we are charged through WIOA to support English language learners to achieve competency in the English language and acquire the basic and more advanced skills needed to function effectively as parents, workers, and citizens. So through the EARN project, we are thinking about linguistic integration as the speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills that enable English learners to engage, navigate, and integrate into their local communities. So on the next slide, you'll see these three items. These are the same as the three items that were in the framework that I showed earlier. And these strategies can support linguistic integration. So the first, contextualized English language instruction, applies English speaking, listening, reading, writing skills to academic, job-related, or civic-oriented situations. And in this way, immigrants and English learners can improve their English language skills while learning content that's really relevant to them, real-world situations. Multilingual strategies can enhance immigrants and English learners' understanding of instructional content and facilitate their language development in English. And technology-enabled instruction, such as remote, blended, or hybrid learning, can increase immigrants and English learners' access to English language instruction. So on the next slide, you'll see three benefits of using multilingual approaches. Why might it be beneficial to consider them? So first, multilingual approaches can assist in the improvement of English. So previous research has shown that the use of the home language in the classroom can lead to improved outcomes for adult learners with emerging literacy and beginning English skills for reading comprehension and oral communication in English. You can encourage multilingual adults to take advantage of their previous experiences and knowledge throughout the language learning process. Use of their experience and prior knowledge is a principle of many adult learning theories and enhances the metalinguistic skills of multilingual adults. A multilingual approach also aligns with the objectives of the English language proficiency standards in adult education. We'll put the link to that on the Jamboard, and TESOL's 6 principles. So second, multilingual approaches can support the educational and skill achievement of parents and family members to participate in the educational development of their children. For multilingual children, proficiency in the home languages corresponds to better home relationships in adolescence and represents linguistic and non-linguistic advantages. Furthermore, multilingualism enhances cognitive functioning, such as resolving conflict among competing options and switching tasks. In this way, a multilingual approach supports not only adults in their educational and economic outcomes, but can also lead to benefits for multilingual families. And then finally, multilingual approaches can assist in employment and economic self-sufficiency. Drawing on multilingual adults' language capabilities can prepare them to meet the increasing demand for bilingual work, especially in fields like healthcare and education. So next slide. So I've just described why it's beneficial, but now we're going to dig into what a multilingual approach actually is. So employing a multilingual approach does not require adult ed programs to provide instruction in a language other than English. It is actually about offering instructional strategies that supplement instruction in English and support English language acquisition. Multilingual approaches also allow learners to access their full linguistic repertoire for the purposes of accelerating their English proficiency. A multilingual approach to program design and instruction can frame adults' multiple languages in the English classroom and in the community as an asset that can support English language acquisition. Next slide, please. So when implementing multilingual approaches, consider that multilingual approaches should supplement instruction in English, not replace it. Multilingual approaches are not one-size-fits-all. Programs and instructors should carefully consider the needs and objectives of their program and learners when determining if and when to use multilingual approaches. You will see examples of how programs adapt strategies to their learners' needs and objectives today. Adult education classrooms serve speakers of many languages, and so you'll always want to carefully consider how multilingual approaches are used to ensure that all learners have equitable access to the instruction. So now we'd love to hear a little bit from you in the chat about what languages and literacies your multilingual adults are bringing to the classroom. So feel free to pop some responses in the chat. Hindi, French, Somali, Arabic, Spanish, Haitian Creole. Oh, I can't keep up. There's a lot, but that's right, because we teach students with a lot of different languages and literacies. So thank you for sharing that. Oh, Alexis just put in digital literacy, another kind of way that we speak and need to be able to speak. Great, thank you. Okay, so one more thing on the next slide. I just wanted to note that while our focus today is on how program providers and instructors implement multilingual approaches, it is important to note that some states may have policies or requirements around the language of instructional delivery. So if you're uncertain, you may want to check with your state office. If you're not sure if your state explicitly allows or disallows instruction in languages other than English. So states may also facilitate access to instructional materials in multiple languages. They can also allow high school equivalency programs in languages other than English, and potentially offer other solutions as well. So with that caveat, I just would like to transition now to learning about specific multilingual approaches. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Alexis Chiruka with World Education, who is a staff member on the EARN project to talk more about some specific multilingual approaches. Thanks, Alexis.
Great. Thank you, Jessie. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you here today. As Jessie mentioned, now we're going to turn our attention to what those multilingual approaches are more specifically. So my plan today is to share 5 multilingual approaches with you. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list. I'm sure you can come up with many more, but rather these are examples of approaches that you might consider integrating for multilingual instructional and programmatic techniques for the classroom. So I'm going to briefly describe each approach, share a few examples, and then we'll turn to our expert practitioners who will share on a panel about their experience implementing some of these approaches. So on the next slide, you'll see the first approach, which is to engage multilingual community members. This is a very broad approach, but we know that community engagement efforts can really build on multilingual adults' language capabilities through interaction with community members. This can support receiving community members in learning more about newcomers as well. So this is really an interactive component with the community and those that are newly entering it. So for example, this could take many different forms. One could be collaborating with families to establish service learning opportunities that can take advantage of multilingual adults' many language capabilities. So community-oriented efforts such as service learning projects can encourage multilingual adults to be part of decision-making processes about their learning, about program content, goals, procedures, and these service learning projects can lead to improved self-confidence, digital literacy skills, employability skills, lots of other great outcomes. So they're really building on these language capabilities and interacting with others to forward all of these important goals. So for example, the National Center for Families Learning Toyota Family Learning Project engaged with over 500 parents, the majority of whom were multilingual adults in these learner-led projects, and IELCE providers could establish similar initiatives based on learner suggestions. On the next slide, we'll see multilingual approach number 2, which is to build awareness of and incorporate multilingual adults' assets and capabilities in career planning. So for example, we can ensure that multilingual adults' linguistic capabilities are integrated into employment searches and career pathway planning. IELCE providers could include questions at intake or in career navigation and advising sessions to learn more about multilingual adults' linguistic backgrounds. And through connecting with other immigrant serving organizations in the area and the local workforce development organizations, career navigators and others offering career navigation can stay updated on the landscape of bilingual work in the local labor market. Next, multilingual approach 3 is to create opportunities in the curriculum and lesson plans for multilingual adults to guide their own language use for the purposes of English language acquisition. So this is a quite broad one and really speaks to the design of the instruction, but this could mean generating opportunities for multilingual adults who are learning English to guide their own language use. So offering multilingual adults who are learning English the space to guide their own learning and determine how and when to use languages follows adult learning principles of self-direction that so many adults that fit well for so many adults, and also make space for these adults to build their own multilingual identities. We can also provide opportunities for multilingual adults to influence the curriculum and shape their learning experience, such as asking for input through surveys, generating a list of topics for study as a class to consider. Next, for multilingual approach number 4, we can establish communicative English activities that draw on multilingual capabilities. So there's a lot of really good options here. For example, we can think about establishing opportunities for multilingual adults to share their experiences using home languages and English. So for example, we might ask learners to interview each other if they share the same home language, using that home language as needed and English. And then when they report back to the class, try to report back what they learned from their interview in English. So really drawing on both of those languages. Next, for multilingual approach number 5, we can think about the materials we're using in our classrooms. So develop materials that are drawing on multilingual adults' home languages and that support that English instruction. So for example, we might have activities and materials that request our multilingual adults to select and read a poem in their home language and then analyze it in English, tell us what it's about. So these are just a few options of many ways that we can consider these multilingual approaches and what they can look like in our program design and instruction. And we're going to hear much more from practitioners about how this looks in their context. But before we do, as we move to the next slide, I want to ask us to take a second, review these really, really broad multilingual approaches. So there are 5 we're talking about today. Number 1, engage multilingual community members. Number 2, build awareness of and incorporate multilingual adults' assets and capabilities into career planning. Number 3, create opportunities in curriculum and lesson plans for multilingual adults to guide their own language used for the purpose of English acquisition. Establish communicative English activities that draw on these multilingual capabilities. And lastly, develop materials that draw on multilingual adults' home languages and to support that English instruction. So at a program design level, number 1, we're looking at engaging with the community. Number 2, we're looking at that career navigation element. Number 3, we're looking at curriculum and lesson plans and where we can make space for multilingual adults to guide language use. And number 4 and 5, we're looking at instruction. How can we make those communicative activities that draw on home languages and our materials and products that draw on home languages? So now I want to know what you think. So in a second, a poll is going to appear on your screen and want you to take a second to tell us if, number 1, it's something that you're already doing. If number 2, it's something that you want to learn more about. And in the third column, if it's something you're not sure would work in your context. So these are the same 5 multilingual approaches we've just discussed. I've shared a few examples from each. So take a few minutes and think about your own context for each one. Is this something you're already doing? Is this something you want to learn more about? Or is this something you're unsure if it will work in your own context? Okay, great. We have our results. So it looks like there's a lot of you who are already doing these, which is great start. So many that are interested in learning more. So you're in the right place. We're really glad that you're here. And for those of you who aren't sure if some of these could work in your context, hopefully after hearing from our expert panelists, you'll see how this looks in theirs and maybe wonder if there's ways it could work in yours as well. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your participation in that poll. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to turn to the next part of our session today, which is to hear from practitioners about their own experiences, look at these multilingual approaches in action. So for the next portion of this webinar, we are going to have a panel with 3 practitioners who have implemented several of the multilingual approaches in their contexts. So you can turn to the next slide. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Xavier Munoz from English Empowerment Center in Virginia, Kelly Keith at Mount Hood Community College in Oregon, and Katie Donneville from English Skills Learning Center in Utah. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Danny Scherer from World Education, who will moderate our panel. If you have questions throughout the panel, our panelists may not be able to answer them as they're speaking, but please do put them in the chat and we will see if we can get to them at the end with Q&A or be able to follow up with you after. All right, Danny, take it away.
Thank you, Alexis. And I think we're going to bring our panelists up and spotlight them. So we will just take a second for everyone to appear on your screen. And yeah, we wanted to have a chance to be able to talk in a conversation. So let me just make sure everyone is spotlighted. I'll give us a second to transition. So we should have 4 people, and I think we were going to take the slides down. Wonderful. Okay, we have 2 people spotlighted, and we'll wait for our 2 more panelists to join us. Awesome. I love that they're slowly popping into the room. And there's Kelly. Great. Okay. So we are really excited to be able to talk to these 3 experts on your screen about the multilingual approaches they use, because we can tell you about them, but we know the best learning happens when you're able to hear from people who do similar work to what you do. And that's really where we learn from each other. So I'd like to take a chance for everyone to introduce themselves. I'll start with Xavier. If you could tell us about yourself and your program, as well as the participants you serve, and what purpose do they usually come to your program for?
Thank you so much, Danny and Alexis. Hello, everyone. My name is Xavier Munoz. I'm the Director of Academic Programs and Student Services at the English Empowerment Center, which is formerly known as the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia. We're a community-based organization. We're based in Northern Virginia, but we provide in-person and online classes, family literacy, beginning English, workplace literacy, and other types of classes to adults of immigrant and refugee background. Typically 1,500 learners every year who come from 67 different countries, speak 38 different languages. It's a very diverse group of learners we get to work with, and they typically come to us looking to learn English.
Thank you, Xavier. And Katie, same question to you, your program and your participants and why they come to you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm Katie Donneville. I'm the Executive Director of the English Skills Learning Center, which is based in Salt Lake County, Utah. Everything that we do at the ESLC is based off of two-way mutual integration. So we believe that communities are stronger when they're successfully integrated, and that happens when the whole community shows up and is engaged in that work. So for welcoming community members, we have workshops, trainings, volunteer opportunities, and even a book club. And for adult language learners, we have programming in foundational literacy, family literacy, US civics and history, and workforce training. A lot of our students are refugees who have interrupted formal education. So a lot of them are adult emergent readers who are learning to read and write for the first time, which also brings me to another capacity that I serve in on the board of Literacy, Education, and Second Language Learning for Adults, or LESLA. And LESLA is another nonprofit organization that is an international organization that seeks to aims to support adults who are learning to read and write for the first time in their lives by sharing effective research practices, teaching practices, and information on policy.
Thank you so much, Katie, and thanks for bringing up LESLA as an organization. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you for having me here today. It's nice to be here with all of you. So my name is Kelly Keith, and I am the Dean of Pre-College at Mount Hood Community College in the Portland metro area in Gresham, Oregon. We are located in East Multnomah County, where we have the largest concentration of diversity in the state of Oregon. And by diversity, I mean socioeconomic diversity, linguistic diversity, cultural diversity, very diverse area. And as folks are really unable to afford the Portland area, or unable to afford housing and life in Portland, the diversity is really growing annually, and people are shifting to east of Portland, which is where my community college is located. And when I speak to you today, I'm really going to be speaking to you from the perspective of career pathways for multilingual learners. So those who participate in our program, the programs that are part of my portfolio include ESOL, ABE GED, Spanish GED, Intensive English for College and Careers, which is the credit portion of the ESOL program. It's right before students transition to degree programs or programs of study, and career pathways is also part of my portfolio. Let's see, I have in my area WIOA Title II, IELCE, and some Department of Labor funds that we're really using to implement pre-apprenticeship in construction that is really focused on that priority population. And really my purpose and how I see my role is to serve all of the priority community groups so that they can advance their academic skills, achieve their college and career goals, and attain employment or advance in their careers. I also work very closely and employ staff at our one-stop center, and we work very closely together in that workforce development system, which is located very closely to my community college.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So we're going to move into hearing about the specific multilingual strategies that these three programs use. I wanted to point out that Eileen, Xavier, Katie, and Alexis are modeling beautifully what I wanted to encourage people to do in the chat, which is ask questions, add resources. You can ask questions of our panelists. They happen to be amazing multitaskers. So we said maybe they'll be not able to answer your questions, but actually they can. So I encourage you to ask questions in the chat so that they can answer your questions, or Alexis or someone else can do so. So we would like to ask each program to tell us about which multilingual strategies they're using. And as you listen to them talk, you can think about whether you're using those strategies or whether you would like to try to use those strategies. I also wanted to point out that on the second slide of the Jamboard, we've actually written out the strategies that our three presenters are going to talk about. So if you have trouble keeping track of which ones they mention, you can go to the second slide of our Jamboard and it's all written out there. Xavier, I'd love to start with you. Can you tell us about which multilingual strategies you use at the English Empowerment Center and how they align with your program's goals?
Absolutely. So I want to talk about two strategies. The first one is engaging multilingual community members, inviting multilingual adults and other community members to support English language instruction, which looks like volunteer roles typically for us, as well as some paid teacher roles. So it's from helping with registrations to calling students during the semester as with supportive retention calls, and then certainly as teachers, class aides, and tutors, bringing in bilingual, multilingual folks to help our adult English learners. So the reason why we do this, it kind of comes to a key question of what might improve the student, the learner experience? Well, addressing language access barriers, motivation, connecting learners with near peer role models, those who are of a similar background and are more proficient in English, right? Reflecting the rich diversity of the learners we get to serve. But also we know from learners that the sense of comfort that they feel in having access to that first language support during class time. A lot of our classes, the impact is confidence building, and it can help to have someone who can relate or who can have that more social emotional conversation with you and not just have to be focusing on the academics and the teaching and learning. Also provides a rich opportunity for our graduated students who want to give back or want to either continue their teacher professional career or try that out. It's an opportunity to keep those learners engaged as well as helping to fully staff our classes. The other strategy to talk about is the creating opportunities in curriculum and lesson plans for multilingual adult learners to guide their own language use for English acquisition. And one of the ways we do this is via project-based learning opportunities. Specifically, one that we found great success with is a digital literacy project, a project that's for learners to describe and portray an important folk story from their home culture. This is inspired by a Teaching the Skills That Matter project, digital literacy lesson plan. And it relates to a question of when learners come to our program to learn English, we know that workplace readiness, digital literacy, digital resilience, all these other skills are necessary, but how can we help learners see the relevance of digital literacy given the limited class time that we have with them? Well, contextualizing digital literacy instruction, we know helps learners feel that they're still learning English, but they're also getting to practice and develop those digital skills alongside that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Xavier. Katie, I'll turn it over to you. Which multilingual strategies are you using and how do they align with your program's goals?
So we employ a lot of different strategies at the ESLC, but the ones I want to focus on today are really classroom-based. And so giving adults the agency of when and how they use their preferred language is something that we lean into pretty heavily. For example, in a classroom where we might be teaching new content, new language skills, and for a lot of our student population with interrupted or limited formal education, they're seeing themselves in the classroom for the first time. And so we aim to make that a very comfortable and safe space for them when we're giving directions or introducing new content. We're often allowing people to communicate about topics in whichever language they prefer when possible, just so we make sure that everyone understands the goal of the lesson, the content that we're discussing, and they can show up as their full selves in the classroom space. This is also a matter of representation. And so designing activities that not only allow for multilingualism, but encourage multilingualism is something that we do often, not only just to give people permission, but to show that their heritage languages are valuable and they can be seen and represented in a formal space. This all ties back to our goal of two-way mutual integration and allowing people to show up in the community and in the classroom space as their full selves. Our ultimate goal would be a plural linguist society, right? Where we're all multilingual, but not only just multilingual in certain settings, but we can draw on multilingual assets and knowledge to create our full selves. And so we want that to be represented in our classrooms.
Katie, thank you. And you're getting some encouragement in the chat that yes, agency is so important. And I definitely hear a thread between Xavier and what you were saying about confidence, agency, and kind of the social emotional component of giving full permission for people to be their full selves by using their linguistic repertoire. Kelly, I'd like to turn it over to you. Which multilingual strategies are you going to talk about and how are they connected to what your program aims to do overall? And Kelly, you are muted.
After how many years? Okay, so I'm going to talk about two different things. I'm going to talk about the building awareness of the assets that our multilingual learners have, both internal to the context I work in, but also external with partners and employers. And then also how did we integrate this awareness building into our career pathways program as programs in general as we scale and plan out alternative pathway options or further our pathway options for students. So it really began several years ago when we had a very large number of multilingual learners who were interested in early childhood education and sort of the pathway there. And we also had one of our partners reach out and say, hey, can we do one of those IETs to really accelerate these students? And so after some time, it was not a quick approach, but after some time and coming to the table and having these discussions and learning and listening from our partners and from students and from the community, we really began to unpack what really needs to happen especially in our IELCE career pathways that we've developed. So what emerged from the discussions was that our community wants and needs childcare providers and teachers who are bicultural and who speak the languages represented in the community. And so that's really the starting point for us. It's how do we how do we do this, and what is the curriculum going to look like, and just kind of stepping off the curve and figuring out how to really build this and then integrate it in a way that will help students develop the language skills that they need, but also honor and embrace what they bring to the program overall. So that's kind of how we started. And yeah, do you want to know how we integrated this, or is that the next question?
I totally do. That's my next question.
Okay.
So, and I'm struck by how your multilingual strategies came out of being responsive both to the learners, but also to the community and the demand in the workforce. So
Right.
we're going to move into kind of the details of how you did this. So, people probably want to know a little bit more about the how, a little bit more about the nitty gritty. So I can actually start with Kelly if we're okay with reversing order a little bit, keep everyone on their toes. So Kelly, can you tell us a little bit more about how you actually implemented this?
So this in the context of Oregon and in the context of a community college, and then also bringing in very supportive partners and maybe those who aren't as on board with diversity into those conversations, it really took time to do an unbelievable amount of information sharing, from bringing in data on the increasing diversity in the community and sharing that out with key stakeholders. We brought in our childcare resource and referral partners, and they spoke at great length to the need in the community, and also the trainings that they provide and what that would mean in terms of students taking one training and another training, and then that increases their wages and leads to an industry recognized credential. And then it also took working with some institutional partners who needed to really understand why would we do this when we're an English speaking college. And so in the end, it was a lot of conversation, it was a lot of data sharing, it was a lot of case making, it was a lot of time spent in building that foundation of understanding. And once we got that, then we were really able to get some commitments from my internal partners at the institute, at my institution. And then from there, it really became, now we have to take the ample time to really prepare a curriculum that harnesses the multilingual opportunities in the classroom, much like my colleagues here have talked about, and really finding the ways to really affirm students and their confidence around having that skill set of being a multi-language learner, and really, making that rhetoric in the classroom and really helping students or not helping students, but really setting that intention that this is a skill, it's an asset, and really connecting that to employment and all of the things that our employers are now also looking for. So yeah, that's really how the strategy worked from my lens.
So thank you so much for sharing, Kelly. I wonder if people are listening to this and it's resonating with them that in some ways you need to build a case for this, and using data and using success stories and forming a lot of partnerships in order to make it clear to all the different stakeholders why this is an asset and why there's demand for it and why it's going to help with learning, and that it's not necessarily an overnight thing. So that's what I hear you saying, is that this takes time, and you have to kind of build up some of your stories and data in order to communicate that effectively. So thank you so much, Kelly. I'm going to turn it over to Katie. Can you tell us a little bit about the how for your multilingual strategies. And I think you have a slide you want to share at one point.
Yeah, that's one of them right there. I wanted to give some examples of being intentional with including multilingual approaches in the classroom. I think a lot of us probably have the experience where these are accidental, where people just start having their side conversations in another language and will allow that and maybe call that a multilingual approach, which in some ways it is. But what I want to focus on is a little more intentionality. So these are examples of 3 different worksheets that we've created that just create an intentional space for people to write something in another language, do pre-writing in another language. Again, just as that representation and agency, you'll notice on that dream word association, it just says any language. And we're not saying you need to write in your first language or this language or that language, just says any language. So whichever one you want to write in, you can do that there. So tying that back to that agency in how they choose to engage in different languages. And just on the topic of agency too, one thing that I haven't mentioned is just a large percentage of our student population have trauma backgrounds as well. And so that agency is particularly important for that population and just giving them more, empowering them more to be who they are, show up as their whole selves. And in a lot of cases, permission is needed for people to feel comfortable to use languages. Languages maybe historically, culturally, in other ways have been weaponized. And so creating a safe space for people to be allowed to use languages freely is the intention with these types of worksheets. And then on the next slide, I just wanted to show an example of what this might look like in a pre-literate, non-literate class. So this is an activity where we're working on initial sound segmentation. We're just isolating the first sound of a word in order to start building that foundational literacy skills. So with this activity, we say the sound and then people can say words in any language that start with that sound. And so this is particularly useful activity because the instructor doesn't need to know all 17 languages that are in the classroom. They just need to know how to listen for that sound. And so all of a sudden we're getting a lot of people sharing different languages. There might be some sharing of what the words mean. So people are teaching each other. And again, just seeing themselves represented in the classroom space in a formal setting where they might not have seen their language used in a formal space before. So we're providing that opportunity through these activities. We also use focus groups and interpretation during our strategic planning process every couple of years, where we're bringing in students and asking them specifically about their experience in classes. This can be related to different topics we're teaching, activities we're using, teaching styles that they see, just to receive that input. So it might not be happening in the classroom level, but we're bringing in contracting professional services and interpretation to be able to get that feedback from students so we can keep improving what we're doing and just creating a good, safe space that meets their expectations as well.
Thank you so much, Katie. So many good points. And one of them, just by seeing these concrete examples, makes it feel more doable. And also by saying the instructor doesn't have to have all these languages and literacies, right? In order to be able to use multilingual strategies, you invite the learners to provide the language. So if that was an intimidating factor for anyone, hopefully they feel more enabled to do this kind of work. So Xavier, I'd like to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty for your strategies that you implement.
Great. So John, actually, if you want to go to the next slide, I can talk about our project-based learning example, and then we can take the slides down. So again, this one, it comes from the Teaching the Skills That Matter in Adult Education project. It's a folk stories project. So the objectives, students are learning how to use media to present a story from a culture, and they're we're learning to gather and evaluate information from a variety of resources, digital and non-digital. So this project is part of our intermediate advanced level intensive English class, and it's broken into multiple stages across several weeks. So there's project introduction, there's story research and writing, there's typing up the story, and then practicing how to present it, and then presenting it. And in this case, presenting it to their class, which is comprised of learners from a variety of countries and speaking a variety of languages. So the end product, by nature of the audience, is English, but the teacher invites learners to do research in a variety of ways. So they might put learners into a breakout room with peers, perhaps same language pairs, to welcome that space for learners to talk with each other in their native language, but also sharing examples from past projects. Oh, there's other students that used YouTube, they used Google, even made WhatsApp calls to family and friends back home, just to make clear that you can tap into that so that you can share the interesting things that you want to share about this folk story. Part of that, how to get that to happen, is setting up that space where learners see and instructors see that it can be a very multilingual classroom space. So it's an ongoing work related to instructor training, having open conversations with instructors, being very clear and repeatedly sharing how we're not an English-only school. Let's look at learners' languages, backgrounds, cultures, experiences as assets to recognize, to validate, and to build upon. And then as teachers share those anecdotes of, oh, I saw learners do this because they work together and happen to use their own language, celebrating that, amplifying those kind of anecdotes. Going back to my first strategy, and John, if you want to take the slides down, you can, about inviting multilingual adults to help support English language instruction. This is where instructor training is really key, and not just pre-service instructor training, but also weekly chats and other ways that we have touch points with instructors, where we're not just focusing on the how. So how, if you're a monolingual English speaker, how might you take some different multilingual strategies? Or if you as the teacher or as a class 8 are bilingual or multilingual and share the same language with a few of the learners, how does that work? And from which you can use some of the resources on the Jamboard, like the translanguaging guides from CUNY, the City University of New York, to show a lot of activity ideas that we use every day in our English language acquisition IELCE classes, with little modifications like the great examples that Katie shared to invite use of any language. So there's certainly that piece, the very practical side of the how can we do this. But crucially, I want to briefly share about the why. When it comes to teacher development, we know that it's not just about the practice, but it's also about the principles and beliefs. And we have to spend time on helping instructors question and reflect on their own teaching beliefs. So in our pre-service instructor training, we do this in two key ways. One, there's a reflection on self. So before they come to the first part of the instructor training, there's a pre-task where they evaluate, think about their own multilingual, multicultural identity. There's also a resource I put in the Jamboard on plurilingual, pluricultural tasks, basically getting instructors to think about the languages, the cultures that they've been exposed to or that they've learned, and kind of mapping it on a diagram of the body and how that encapsulates part of their whole identity. And then bringing it into the live part of the instructor training, where they're learning with others, learning in community, where we have them share those diagrams, discuss what those languages mean to them, what the memories are, and then expand upon that by having them read a classroom vignette that shows a teacher of an adult migrant classroom that's kind of a more drop-in type of class. And it's one particular day where a new student joins. How does the teacher get to know that learner? How does the teacher help that student feel a sense of belonging? How does the teacher foster a sense of community with this new learner and the learners who've already been there? Well, some of the ways involve various multilingual strategies that we've talked about, that Jesse talked about and Alexis talked about earlier in this webinar. So using it, having our trainees spend time reading it, having some guiding discussion questions to help them think about, oh, I didn't realize I could do this, or, oh, this makes a lot of sense, or oh, to give them some real examples, but crucially to link it back to, as teachers, a core principle is to know your learners, and to, by getting to know them, you can tailor and adapt instruction. How can we get to know them beyond just what their English skills are presenting as? How can we get to know how convincing they are in group work or the interest that they have. Especially at a beginning level ESL class, multilingual strategies can be a way to invite them to share more with us and help them have more voice beyond just what they can do in English. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the advice to share in the next question, but that's some ways that we've implemented those strategies.
Thank you so much for everything you just shared and for bringing in the importance of identity and teachers' identity and doing some of that work on the why. So as Xavier alluded to, our final question for our panelists is to ask them what advice they would give for other people interested in and looking to begin implementing multilingual strategies. So Kelly, I'll start with you. What advice would you give to other practitioners?
I think when you begin to make changes, whether small or big, to curriculum or programming or anything that's new, I think it's really important to honor what came before and to be open about that. This was something we've done for many years and it was good. And now we have new information and it's time to really think more deeply about that information and find ways that make sense for us to be responsive to that. I think that's really important. And then also, again, I think case making is really, really key. It takes a little bit longer, but I think it's really important to have a foundation where you can have a discussion with people and we all are coming to the same space with at least the same information. I'm thinking of Xavier and Katie, you're talking about all these curriculum things, and I think they're absolutely extraordinary. And they are largely lacking in the textbooks that many of us buy and our students buy. And I think there is a space for advocating with our publishers to begin integrating culturally appropriate assignments and tasks and to be culturally responsive, which they are largely not, in my opinion. So, so I think it would be more relevant to our students. Of course, I think OERs or the movement to have lower cost materials for students is also important. And so I'm really intrigued by the work that both of you, my colleagues here, are doing. But yeah, I think case making, advocacy, spending the time to build foundations with those, honoring what was, and start moving forward to what could be. And I like Xavier and how you said the why. That's really important. So.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Katie, I'll turn it over to you. What advice would you give to others looking to implement multilingual strategies?
Yeah, I think going back to the why here is exactly what I want to talk about as well. And just sharing that I've been challenging everyone to really examine how they view second language learning. For a lot of people who grew up in the US and speak English as their first language, if they learn another language, they're absolutely applauded for that effort. But for our refugee and immigrant students in our programming, they're expected to put in that effort. So we are trying to shake up that narrative. Our organization's vision statement is a community where all voices are celebrated, and we want that to be represented in our classroom. So I would just be really clear about why you're choosing to go with multilingual approaches. Something that I kind of mentioned is trying to maybe avoid those accidental approaches and really get intentional with your approaches. That's how you're going to be successful. It's how you're going to really communicate to your students that you value their whole linguistic repertoire and their whole selves that they're bringing to your classroom. As far as classroom activities, I know that teachers can feel conflicted, especially in community-based programs when you might have 2 hours a week with people. So you might be questioning whether or not you should be really focusing on English during that time. And there's some validity within that, but it's also a balance. And I think the point to really lean into and the question to ask yourself is, what's the purpose of this activity? What's the intention behind this activity that we're doing? And if the intention behind the activity is a focus on accuracy or production in English, then push people to speak in English. If the focus is understanding the content, why would you not allow adults in your program to truly understand the content in whichever way makes sense to them, and really get to that point where they can reach the production side in English as well. So that would just be my intentionality and a clear purpose.
Thank you so much, Katie. And Xavier, finally, what advice would you have for people looking to implement multilingual strategies?
Yeah, I feel like there's probably more to say. Kelly and Katie said so much. If I had to add a couple things, it's just emphasizing the buy-in piece and the stakeholder engagement. So staff, you might have to be educating other staff in your organization. Certainly there's the instructors like Katie was talking about, and the students. At the English Empowerment Center, we're not forcing teachers to use these strategies. We're not forcing students to use a particular language at certain times, but it's about right, getting back to those reasons and the why, right? How can we connect with learners? How can we help them use these skills that when they're outside of the classroom, they're going to be using anyway, right? Like they're not going to say, okay, let me shut off that side of my brain and only use my English to get through and navigate this scenario or this experience. Bringing those real life multifaceted skills into the classroom to help support their English acquisition and so on. Very much respecting, encouraging learner choice agency, like Katie was talking about earlier. And when it comes to the buy-in piece, collecting those student success stories. And I talked briefly about the confidence building and those moments when learners know that there's someone on staff or there's a volunteer who is a former student with whom they can relate very quickly and get the chance to communicate in more depth and with much more meaning than maybe just they could do in English. I think I'll end with a quote from a linguistic scholar, Lourdes Ortega, who gave a talk that's linked in the Jamboard on multilingual understanding of English competence and success, where she said, people want to use language so as to be seen, heard, and judged in desirable ways in their actual and imagined social worlds. Multilingual approaches, multilingual strategies are one way, I think an incredible way, but one way where as programs, instructors, fellow classmates, we can help our learners feel that space where they can be seen, heard, and judged in desirable ways in the classroom while they're developing their skills when they move outside into beyond the classroom.
I'm feeling really honored to share this space with the three of you and with everyone listening. I really can't wrap it up better than you just did, Xavier. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessie to wrap up our webinar. And I just want to thank the three of you very deeply for sharing your expertise.
Thanks, Danny. And I echo those thanks. That was such a great discussion, so informative, so thoughtful. And I think everybody here really, really appreciated it as well. I'm just going to quickly wrap up since we're almost at time. I did want to let folks know that you can think about the strategies that you'd like to implement based on the strategies that are in the Jamboard. If you want to go back and look at those, they're there for you. You can take a look at them and see if there's any that you're interested in. Ideas for how to get started are on the next slide. Some of the things that you might want to do if this is a path you're interested in learning more about is really be able to think about how multilingual approaches align with your program's goals. And then as you heard Katie say so beautifully, how it aligns even with your classroom goals and your particular goals of a lesson plan. Think about who you need to talk to. Kelly did a great job of talking about partnerships and building buy-in across your organization, and then thinking about your strengths. What are some challenges you can anticipate, but how can you use your program's assets to overcome them? So lastly, We will have the links that folks mentioned on the Jamboard. Please go ahead and take a look at them. We have plenty of resources from EARN that relate to multilingualism on links, and hopefully we'll have more. And then if you want to hear more from EARN or want news when we have new resources, please feel free to join our distribution list. You can just email us at earn@rti.org. That's also how you can get slides or a link to the recording of today's presentation. Just send us a link, an email to earn@rti.org. So with that, I just want to thank everybody again for participating, especially to Xavier, Kelly, and Katie for sharing their practices in that wonderful discussion. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us until 5 p.m. here on the East Coast. And please be in touch with any questions. Thanks so much and have a great day.